want access to any of that stuff.
Yeah, I learned something.
That is.
There we are. We are live for this week. As I mentioned in the comments, it's kind of the free lunch version of the Bogus Hangout. There's no bill. But I am joined
Free lunch
by Terry Van Horn and by Steve. And yeah, we never have a lack of things to talk about here. We might not want to share them with you lot, but you know, we never have a lack of things to talk about.
We could try to keep it. We could try to keep the PG rating.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not sure we ever had a PG rating. Yeah. But parental guidance would say, "Don't watch that." Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting week, really. I've been writing lots of core posts and rediscovering how little most people know about SEO. Every now and again, you kind of forget. You know, you've got your own network who happen to know the stuff, and then you expose yourself to a group outside of that, and you suddenly realise that they're still talking about LSI.
Oh, yeah. See that in the
yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Not LSI, but other things like it.
Well, as I said to one of them, you know, look, LSI, just because it's got the word semantic in there doesn't mean that this is how semantic search works. I've got a news flash for you. There's no actual P's in PHP either. They don't make it that way.
That's funny.
Yeah. And, you know, the one you were talking about, I saw this in a group. Somebody, oh, this guy said he's a web developer and an SEO. That's always such a warning sign for me. Do you know anyone that does both? And immediately.
But I would say, how can you be an SEO and not be a web developer?
Exactly that.
Exactly.
We have to fix the issues that your standard professional web developer misses.
Yeah.
That's why good web developers who say SEOs don't really do anything, a lot of times I have to agree with them, because SEO is about 80% good web development techniques and practices, period.
Yeah.
Then you got 20%.
Well, you know, the other side of that coin is a lot of people who consider themselves web developers are WordPress people or graphic designers. They're not low-level programmers, which is where a lot of the really fun stuff starts to happen. And installing Yoast SEO plugin or one of the others doesn't necessarily make you an SEO, which is the other problem we have with a lot of times, is convincing people to let go of some of the tools a little bit and understand the underlying reasons behind the tools.
But it just, you know, reminded me that when guys like us started, the term was webmaster, and you not only knew how to develop and how to promote, but you also knew how to look after the server and every other technology involved, because you were expected to know all things web, or at least to know enough to know when you needed to pull somebody else in.
In the early days,
project manage the entire web project.
That's why I think Google always refers to webmasters and not SEOs, because in the old days, if you were an SEO, you were almost certain to be a developer with not just a web developer, but a web developer who knew all of the platform, not just how to do HTML, but how everything worked together. Because that's what we basically did, was take what the search engines couldn't do on their own and make it easier for them. That's what it started out to be. People don't really realize that SEO, it was really hard at one time to get a dynamic site to rank, or even get into the index, little on rank well as well.
Exactly. It's one of the things that first got me really noticed by a lot of people was the fact that I specialized in dynamic optimization because I'd done that on the adult industry. So I was one of the first to do it on the more commercial family side of the web. And, you know, there was literally a thread in, I think it was still Search Engine World at the time instead of Webmaster World. But there was one, you know, has anyone ever got more than 100 pages indexed? A couple of people, oh, yeah, I've got 1,000. And I've got a database live that's 300,000 indexed out of, well, there's currently 400,000. So I reckon there'll be 400,000 by the end of the month. And, you know, what?
Yeah. See, and I started off in the ISP world where we had our, you know, we did our own hosting for other people and understood the back end very, very well. And then as search engines started to evolve, it was, you know, when you're starting off from that point of view, it's like it's just another little piece you just keep adding to the stack of stuff that you do.
Yeah.
And now I would not touch a server to save my life. I got guys I call. I want nothing to do with servers anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is it. When we started, we had to, and we've still got to know the architectural side of all of the things because, you know, there's no point recommending one thing if there's a better way of doing it that we just don't know, and we don't know that we don't know, and we don't have the contacts to find out. Because, you know, what you don't know, you can't ask about.
It's also to future-proof, you have to understand how the technology works and be able to look at the data and the things that Google and other search engines are saying so you can say, okay, they're trying to fix this, so I should be doing this now, right? That's why a lot of people I used to say, you're not an SEO, you're a link builder. Like there's a difference. They're not the same thing. Yeah, linking is part of it, but by no means is it all of it or even close to it. It's a small percentage, actually.
And even that.
It's the old marketing argument. Are you a marketer or are you an SEO or a link builder? Or not that any of those things are bad or wrong or whatever, but you know, so many people put themselves in such tiny little boxes when it came to what they did. It's like, let's leave that as open as possible.
People don't realize the small box they've put themselves in and give themselves the bigger title. Look at link building. You know, there's so many people who say they do link building, and when you look at it, they're doing blog comment spamming. That's not link building. None of those links are worth a crap, you know.
Yeah.
Or they're SEO metrics.
Or still submitting to directories.
Yeah, or they're using SEO metrics to decide whether they want to be on a site. So they're saying, oh, PR4, I got to be there. And then you go and you look at the front page and there's like, it's on 15 different topics and, you know, all the posts are 300 words and, you know, Jesus, this is a guest post.
But it has a high domain authority.
Yeah. Exactly that. And of course, you know, as we've said before, domain authority is a made-up metric by us. It was a handy way of talking about the way that the links to a site as a whole were passed around, you know, a collective value through the navigation mostly. And there was a time when Google, do you remember when there was Ghost Rank? There was the guesstimate ranking. It may not have actually indexed a page yet, but it could already give you a page rank score on the bar, which was based on the root domain -1 for each level deep.
Yeah.
We used to call that Ghost Rank. Yeah, you know, there's elements of that, but actual domain authority, no, it was a made-up metric.
Well, see, and the whole Ghost Rank thing is what created the myth of, you know, page level depth from the homepage being a ranking factor.
Mm-hmm. Even though
that's how we wound up with all these flat websites.
The interior pages were actually higher PR than the homepage. One of those was, of course, Microsoft. The Windows specific download page and driver page was a page rank 10. Microsoft was a 9. And the other one, of course, Adobe.
Yep.
There's what's distributed across the site, and then there's what that page itself generates. That I've seen websites that had some pages internally with higher, or I've seen where at one point one of the sites I owned was 7, 6, 5, and didn't go any lower than 5, no matter how deep you went. And that was because it looks like it's deeper, but I have my hub system that it makes it look like it's really deep, but it's not, because it's linked to from an index page that's closer to the top, and they don't really get that. Page rank passes down the link hierarchy. Yeah, it's interesting when you look at that sort of thing. I used to pay a lot of attention to that when I was looking at websites.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones I've often said that, you know, you've got to look at it on the basis of a metric for determining 6 degrees of separation. It's not about links. It's about the distance between things, and you know, how closely is your site related to Yahoo, to Amazon, to, you know, all of these big sites. There should be common points somewhere. And yeah, a lot of these people who are building these huge PBNs, that's the bit they're missing. They never link to anything that already has power. They've created this huge lot. It's got all of these links. Wow, you know, fantastic, right? But this is a pocket. It doesn't have any authority coming in from outside. And what Google's PageRank was determined, what was built to do, was determine your connectivity to the hub of the web.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when people look at one of my websites that has very high PR, you know the one, they can't figure out how it got it because it's only got a couple of hundred links. And yet it's PR7, right? Oh, how'd you do that? Well, dummy, it's not how many you get, it's how much value is in the ones you got. So if you got 1 or 2 with PR4, guess what? Your site's going to be PR4.
Of course, your auto pay to Matt Cutts didn't hurt either.
And the numbers and quantity, not the quality of the sites.
Yeah, every single time. And it's one of the things I've said to a lot of link builders in the past is, look, that 6 months where you chase so many links every month and those links are effectively worthless. Imagine if you put that effort instead into creating one thing every 6 months that could get some great links. Could you do that? Oh yeah, 6 months we could build this, that, yeah. I said, right, then do that, because that is worth 100 times what all of those monthly links are worth. Not just 6 of them, 100 of them.
That will still have value 6 years from now. Whereas all those 100 PR1 sites you got will have no value past it all 5 years from now, because they'll be abandoned sites.
It's one of the things you really have to be careful with in SEO and, you know, in web development too, is busy work. You know, making yourself so busy doing the little things that you don't have time to do the things that actually matter, that really count, the big projects. And if you don't do that, the little things really have no long-term value at all. A year from now,
it's the same thing with people get stuck in the weeds with these little teeny tiny SEO details, and it's like, seriously, you're worrying about this one little thing that might be a piece of one tiny ranking factor, yet your site navigation is completely screwed.
Yeah.
Let's work on, you know, work down the chain. Don't start at the bottom because that's an easy thing. You know, do the hard, you know, do what is going to have the biggest impact first.
Yeah.
But convincing people of that kind of, paying that kind of attention to, you know, the ROI of what they're doing is tough sometimes.
But that's part of the problem. They don't really understand the value in each job that they're doing to some extent.
It's the difference between somebody who's actually an SEO and somebody who just, you know, diddles around with search engines a bit. But, you know, for the SEO, optimization was always the ultimate thing, and we are always looking at the comparative value. Right, if I spend this much time on this or this much time on that, what will be more effective? If I add more words to this page, well, the fact that it now has more long tail traffic outweigh the fact that it may drop for this term that has previously been the main driver for that. And, you know, optimizing, it doesn't always mean that you just want that one big thing, you know, long tail, change that. But it doesn't also mean that, you know, you want to spend forever in the little details and miss out on the big stuff. Yeah, optimization is the part so many people seem to be missing. They're not optimizing their own effort. They're not optimizing the campaign. And, you know, in development, it's similar. It kind of ends up with creeping featureism, you know, where more and more gets added to it. Was actually that deadline of getting something launched is probably more important than the minimal value that just changing this because it looks prettier is going to actually do. You know, you've got to be really careful that you don't get tied up in perfectionism that isn't going to pay the bills, when good enough can be out there earning while you're then working on perfecting that in version 2. But I see
I'm a big fan of good enough.
I see a lot less developers miss that. You know, they usually do understand the good enough. Their bosses,
yeah, but you know the difference between when good enough is good enough and when good enough isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
Right? I worked with one guy, finally had to say, look at this guy, I can't work with him because he's too willing to accept mediocrity. And that I don't like that. To me, if you're not always trying to do the best you can, otherwise you're just collecting a check, and I can get anybody to sit in that chair and collect a check. And that's why I keep the clients I do, because they respect that I don't just collect a check. I'm invested in their business almost as much as they are. Yeah. And to me, I can't do it any way other. That's why I can't have 15 clients, because literally I couldn't give them the kind of service I feel they deserve.
It depends, you know, what they've got on. I mean, I used to take a few clients, but I'd have quite a lot more projects on the go, because some of them were, you know, they come and get a checkup every 3 months as a general, what should we be doing for the next 3 months? And in 2 days, you're setting them the next 3 months work, but it's only 2 days of my time. Yeah, I'm checking in every now and again to keep up anyway. I'm not just giving the, you know, that bit.
To me, that is in a classification. I do a lot of that, but client to me is someone that I work with closely. I only have 2 at a time. That's all I'll take on, because I know that's all the work I'm willing to do and all I can handle. Then there's 3 or 4 smaller ones where I'm consulting with them, pointing them in the right way and making sure that they're working from having got the right stuff to make the right decisions. Because that's another thing, is I think a lot of people don't really use the right metrics to decide stuff. Like I set an example, link builders who only looked at the PR and that was it. Right, that's good enough. PR, oh, that's good. You know, meanwhile, you look in the guy's, he's got PR 4 because he he's linked to from 5,000 deep link directories.
I
miss those.
I rate Majestic so well. A lot of people, you know, it's Ahrefs is much better. It's got a bigger database. It certainly did have a bigger database. It did, and it worked out the 301 issue before Majestic did, in terms of the reporting it was doing. So that kind of made that look even bigger than it was. But Majestic has a better understanding. Its algorithm is better in terms of how to evaluate those links, how to weight them. And particularly, I like their topical trust flow and citation flow. Trust flow is a good metric, and topical trust flow is absolute gold. You know, that really is one of the very few tools out there. I still wouldn't say, you know, right, I look at that and I'm done. I don't have to check any deeper, but it certainly shortens my list. You know, I'm still going to double check, but yeah, you know, that really does do the business. And of course, one of the things I'm always looking for when I'm looking for links is how easy is it to get this link? Because if anyone can get it, it's worthless. You know, I want one that's got a bit of a barrier to entry. I want a link that you have to earn, because it's going to narrow the amount of competition that can get the same link.
Yeah, I tend to, I like to set up a relationship with a site and try and post there 2 or 3 times a year that way, or even better still, monthly, whatever. That way, you don't have to look for outreach. If there's any problems, it's clustered. So, you know, you cut the cluster out and you don't have, you know, 3 weeks of looking at all these sites that you should have looked at closer the first time. Not saying that's me, but see it when you're cleaning up people's messes, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sometimes surprised at how many people are blocking the rank checkers and you know, the Majestics and SEM rushes and Mozzies. And yeah, I know those bots aren't doing you any good, but they could be if they're giving people the wrong information. You know, make sure that you're giving those bots something that's actually fooling people, you know, making them chase the wrong things, particularly in backlinks. You know, get a whole load of cheap backlinks that look like they're doing something good, and your competition will go and get them. They'll waste their time. It helps you hide the good stuff. Whereas, you know, blocking it just tells everyone that you've got something to hide.
Yeah.
You're only going to look harder.
All you've done is make it harder to get that information. If people want to get that information, I think they can get it.
Yeah.
The thing is that
the absolute idiots, but the absolute idiots aren't going to be able to get the links anyway.
Right. Right. Their sites aren't going to be in the quality to get the sustainable links that you have. That's also, you know, some SEOs get really uptight if they say, oh, that guy used a few words from my title tag. Well, guess what? If you can be reverse engineered that easily, you're in the wrong game, sir. You know, I don't believe that people can actually reverse engineer what I do. They can think they do by looking and getting the same links, but they don't know my thought process in building the website, right? Like, I think that every bit of markup on a page is probably weighted to some extent from legacy, from when that's all they had. You talk to SEOs now, they'll tell you H1s mean nothing. You know, putting stuff in a list means nothing. Oh, they don't use that. Well, sorry. They do use it.
Yeah. Certainly it is in use. It's in use by a lot of the semantic algorithm for certain. Identifying lists is a way that Google can recognize an awful lot of stuff that structured markup can give it as well. But actually, Google can recognize tables, and they can recognize lists, and they can understand that these things are related to each other, and that it's a step by step. They can actually determine a lot of the time that this is a recipe, and oh, this is a timetable, and this is a feature comparison.
It always makes me laugh when a guy says, how did they get in the knowledge graph? There's no structured data. Like, that's the only way you can do it, is if you use structured data. Sorry, using a colon, a name value pair, gives Google the ability to put you in the knowledge graph. Mm-hmm. People don't understand that kind of stuff. They really believe that the only way, all you've done is make it easier,
yes,
for them to see that using structured data. However, when you get to locations and stuff like that, it's better to use the structured data.
Yeah, yeah. Although there's still a lot of stuff that enables them to get the same information other ways anyway. So there's still workarounds, but yeah, I would always go with the structured data around the address and stuff, just to form.
I'm looking forward to the day where Google gets local search completely figured out, because I was curious. I never do searches for my own stuff because I don't have time for it. But I was working on something, and I went ahead and did web developers in my hometown, or web designer. And the #1 listing was a haircut place. The #2 listing was a different haircut place. The #3 listing was a landscape developer in a city 40 miles away. And it's like, they didn't get it to anybody who actually did web design until page 2. It's like,
you know why?
I was baffled by this.
All those places say they do design, right? Haircut.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying. But you're looking at this, and it's like, it was so wrong across the board. It was just
basically
amazing that it was so bad.
You need a trim. That's what it was doing, Steve. Google was telling you needed a trim, bit of manscaping. Yeah,
I did need a hair. I've been on the road so much the last 2 months, it's ridiculous.
But
web development, it's so bad where we live.
Web development is an interesting one, because that's one of the ones that treats differently anyway. SEO, web design, and a couple of others are all immune from having their pins show up on a map. You know the thing where your location shows up as nearby businesses? If you're a web developer, SEO firm, anything in that kind of it, you're not going to show up. You do not show up.
Nope.
Because they were too much, getting spammed. There were too many of them.
Yeah, and the same thing. There's the jewelry field is treated a little differently as well, because what used to be relatively simple nationally is now staggeringly difficult unless you are a national brand, because they've put jewelry into a local category where people are only looking for jewelry, and that's really tough for the jewelers who are mostly online. They're virtual. They don't have.
I'm working on a lawyer's site right now where they rank like crazy on Yahoo and Bing, but the only rankings that they have are in the city and state that they're in. Other than that, nothing. Not even a sniff. And yet we've got location pages for all of them.
Yeah. It's just incentive to pay.
No, actually, they're already on AdWords. I was kind of brought in to see if they couldn't get some SEO. I'm making progress.
No, I'm still frustrated that I can't search for anything local around where I live without putting the state location, the state as well. Because in a triangle between 3 major cities, that are also major cities in other states. So if I do a search for something in Lexington, it throws me into Kentucky. If I do a search for something in Jackson, it throws me to Mississippi. And if I do a search for Savannah, it throws me to Georgia. And it's like, no, all three of those cities are within a half hour right here. Why can't you figure this out?
Yeah.
And that's while logged in.
Where's your ISP though, Steve?
What's that? No, that's logged
Where's
in
your
on my phone.
ISP, your provider?
No, this is mobile. This is on my phone.
Oh,
I have to tell it what state I'm in.
They can't get it on the phone.
Yeah. No. Oh no, it's so screwed. It's funny how you don't notice certain things until you start living in a rural area.
Yeah.
When I lived in a city, no problems ever. You start living out in the country a little bit, and you start seeing how the rest of the world treats you like you don't exist.
Yeah, well, in your area, there's probably not 5 web developers in the whole.
Yeah.
Within
And
miles.
It's kind of funny when
not 5 web designers. So what does Google do? That's the thing that I've always, looked at it and thought, well, if there's only 5, why list all this stuff that's not relevant?
Why do we have 83,000 results? Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
No, it's all of a sudden I'm like living the life of the edge case that Google likes to talk about. Oh, that's just an edge case. It doesn't matter. It's like, well, yeah, but all of us who live here are considered edge cases now.
Yeah.
To us, it matters.
Just got a question from Zara in the comments. Here's some instructions she received yesterday for some writing. The key word is how to build a killer customer training program. Okay, that's incredibly long tail, which should be incorporated 3 to 4 times. I counted with a keyword and call for exact word repetition.
Because that's a how-to, that's tailor-made for the graph, for one thing, for the knowledge graph. So I'd start by seeing what I could, writing even a point form of how you would like the steps in doing it, because Google has those steps as well. So you have the how-to, the steps. If you could hit on any one of those, yeah, who cares if you're right for the keyword?
Yeah.
And then Google puts that in that top of the search results, and nobody ever goes to your website ever anyway, because they just get the answer on Google.
No, the way around that, you create a table of contents near the start that gives, the very thing, do this, but no explanation of how. And they, then details, and they have to come through to see, right, how do I do step 1? How do I do step 2? But you're very likely for those steps to show up like a recipe in the how-to.
Steve, that's a myth. If you actually talk to people that get those things, their traffic rate goes up exponentially when they get in the knowledge graph. It's not like in the old days where you get one of those type answer things and nobody has to come to your website anymore. I think more and more like a how-to is drawing a lot of traffic.
As long as you structure it in such a way that they can't get the answer in the first 2 or 3 steps.
Yeah, I mean, there've always been searches where you don't need to actually click through because the snippet had the answer. There's always been that. There's ones where, let's face it, the title has the answer. What was that film with so-and-so and so-and-so, and it being this? Often it's the movie title that's going to be the title of the article on IMDb or whatever. And, oh, yeah, that's it. And the same with song lyrics. What was the song that had blah, 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 blah? And, the result is going to tell you. You never had to click through.
Like in a recent article, I was retracing the history of the local search, right? So the different updates and, what was happening in 03. Then you get universal search and went through the whole thing. Well, I wasn't sure of all the dates. All I had to do was go to Google and mention, universal search announcement. And it would tell me the day that Google announced it, and I didn't even have to leave a cert. Like, I think that's good for users as well as, buddy. I never felt that that was Google stealing traffic or any of that other stuff. I don't really see it.
Yeah. Right. So Zara, back to your question. For me, I mean, the keywords you've got there, you've got a few. I would actually break this down because you want this to be targeting multiple phrases. You want how to build a customer training program. You want build a customer training program. You want kill a customer training program. You know, out of those phrases, you want several of those to come in. So don't be afraid to break this down into different versions. As long as the words are there, as long as that's the title, it's got a very good chance of that showing up anyway, with just generally related words on the page. Yeah. Because you want that featured snippet, I would do a table of contents type list of the basic steps, which are then links themselves to go into how to do each one. And you've got, you know, a paragraph or a few paragraphs on each of those steps. But that little list can often be shown in the snippet. It's much more likely to. So yeah, if it's done as a table of contents, it goes at the front. If you tend to do it instead as a summary at the end, so this is it, here's the other steps breakdown, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you've already gone through it, that will work as well. Either way, just getting that sort of tabular form that's easy to put into a snippet will massively increase the chances of it getting clicks. Even if it isn't ranking number 1, I bet you it will be the one in the featured snippet, and therefore it will get more clicks than most of the others. It's what we're starting to call position 0. You know, it's where it doesn't matter what the actual rankings are. Okay, yeah, looks like that solved their questions. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Sure, why not? I am so anti-keyword these days. It has become like a mantra for me. I don't even care. I want people to turn off the Yoast, you know, where you have to fill in your little keyword target for your all that blanked out. I want you to write on topics. I want you to write in themes. I want you to forget keywords even exist. Yep, and the rest will take care of itself.
I think we've gone back to the old days where we wrote and addressed audiences, not keywords, because we didn't know really what the keywords were because there was nowhere to get the data. So you look for audiences and you look for targets, not keywords.
Yeah, although the referral string told you what the keywords were, you know, you only had to look in your log files to see what keywords were driving traffic. So I can't remember a time really where we didn't have that. It's these days where we have the least amount of keyword data I've ever had. Oh, there's tons of people trying to sell you third-party stuff. But honestly, if it isn't in my logs, I don't trust it. And even when it's in the logs, it could be a click bot. So, you know, you take these things with a pinch of salt. The number of people that used to, you know, try and claim their advertising was good because look how many visits you got from it. Yeah, it's a bot. You know, you've programmed a bot to click all your links a few hundred times a month to make people think that they're getting good results. How many sales did I get? Oh, funny enough, your bot didn't buy anything, did it?
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to be so careful with stuff like that. But Terry, I was remembering Alta Vista. And, you know, one of the reasons that cloaking was prevalent for a while was, of course, all you literally had to do was copy the #1 ranked page and hide it behind the cloak, and you would usually rank #2. You usually wouldn't outrank the original, although it happened sometimes. And Yeah, I mean, this was why I came up with my anti-cloaking, was because I was working with a dating site, and you know how competitive that industry was in the day. And every week, hundreds of affiliates were copying the page to get some other, agency ranked up there. And I got fed up of filing complaints with Alta Vista. So what I did was did reverse cloaking. I did the spammy version is the one that was sent to the public. It had all the little hallmarks of all the SEO tools. It had that nice image GIF from Web Pro. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it now. It's gone. But it had all of the sort of SEO software hallmarks in it, plus invisible text, plus about 3 other really iffy things, all on the public version. The SE's got the clean version. And I had a note in there as well, in the SE version, that says, by the way, the public version has this because I'm fed up with people copying it. Now, if they copy it, I don't have to worry. Never had another problem, and I'm sure the guys at Alta Vista, if they ever found that hilarious. But yeah, I never had to find another copy of that page again. It stopped overnight, so I think it was working, because you just wouldn't see them anymore because they were getting themselves banned instantly. Yeah,
that's funny.
It's funny, the workarounds that you have to do, and this is why I say SEO it's more of a mindset than anything else. I think people with the right SEO mindset will always find ways to optimize, and it doesn't have to be search. Search happened to be a good means of drawing traffic, but I think most of them optimize anything they come across. They're optimizing conversions, they're optimizing site performance, they're optimizing the way things are getting clicks. It's just built into them.
They're also looking for ways to increase the inventory, i.e. adding new parts to a site so you can add more keywords.
Yeah.
Sometimes in really shallow query spaces, you have to do that to survive, because there's so much competition in this one space I'm working in. I had to do that. So I had to expand it to business registration, all kinds of things that all around business, but not directly our business.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And, even ways to, right, the traffic that doesn't convert, what are you doing with that? Are you just letting it go away? Or are you thinking about why they came but didn't convert and what they might be looking for instead, and providing an affiliate link to that? Or even just a helpful free link to that, because they're more likely to remember you. They remember, I did a search for this, I went to this site, I got what I wanted.
Yeah. When I was doing payday loans, anything, and we only did PPC, anything that didn't qualify, I sold it to a lead company. Sold the leads to a lead company, but they'd end up selling them insurance and all kinds of stuff. I got payback based on where they sold the lead, but it cut our expenses huge, like knocked 10% off the spend, because we were getting the money back that way.
Yeah, and that's become such a huge part of the business these days. Finding out, trying to figure out why they didn't buy, and what you can do to encourage them to buy. And that the buy process isn't one visit. That whole process may be, in some industries, 30, 45, 60 days.
Yep.
The ability to follow the customer that long, to understand what they're doing, to find out whether what you're doing is actually working or not. I always figured we were doing something right if our direct traffic started buying more and more, because that meant people were bookmarking the site and coming back later. And whether they cleared their browsers or whatever, at least we still knew based on that one metric that the brand is getting some awareness. Exactly. And you're not having to worry so much about other issues.
Yeah, it's one of the metrics I really insist on, is that we look at direct traffic and domain type-in traffic as an ongoing metric that we look to increase. Because honestly, you should be getting 80 to 90% of your traffic as either direct or typing in your main brand, because that's what shows you that all of the rest of it has a long-term effect. They're coming back, they're checking out things again. If that's not happening, you're competing for every sale, and it means the next time you're going to have to compete for that customer again. Even if you ranked well then, instead of knowing that you've now got that customer coming back to you, you're going to have to rank well again the next time they want it. Whereas what you should have done is given them the experience that next time they come straight to you.
Right. Direct
one of the custom dashboards.
Yeah.
One of the custom dashboards I like to use in analytics is a brand search, which lets us track the effectiveness of the brand overall.
Yeah.
And when you first show that to a lot of clients, they don't even they never even thought of tracking that kind of thing. And then that becomes their favorite report, because then there's so much more ego in their brand being searched than their favorite keyword. And this is how I get them out of thinking keywords. Yes. It's like, no, you don't need a keyword ranking report. Let's look at your brand report and how that trend is continuing to go up, because people are seeing your website and then going, oh, wait a minute, what was that company that I wanted to go buy from? And they start searching for your brand to find you again.
Yep.
So it's a fun way of educating clients.
And it can help them, if they're larger clients, identify when the rest of their advertising is working. I run a radio campaign and I see a corresponding spike in the amount of brand search because people heard the brand. Right.
Well, one of my jewelry clients is near Notre Dame and actually managed to get mentioned during the broadcast during the football game. The announcers were actually talking about the jewelry store and what they do for the university. And on Monday, they're like, so did that really help us or not over the weekend? And I popped open analytics and went, oh yeah, look at this. And you see this ramp of, like a 5 or 10x increase on weekend traffic that they never had before. All of a sudden it's huge. And then over the next 2 or 3 weeks, their sales spiked, which was really great. Now, figuring out a way to get them mentioned for free on a national broadcast on a regular basis is going to be a bit of a challenge. But hey, at least they finally got mentioned after contributing for 30 years before somebody actually mentioned them. Well, they would have done it anyway, but it's a nice little perk.
A streaker running across wearing only jewelry. That'll do it.
Look at that.
Is that a Prince Albert?
Yeah. I don't.
Stunts do actually work, but they have to be thought out. But yeah, brand is such an important thing. But there's a lot of people. Well, that's what we as a company are doing. Yeah, but it should be increasing. And if you're getting more traffic from SEO, but your brand isn't getting a percentage that matches, isn't getting a corresponding increase, then that traffic is not long term. You're having to compete, and I'll bet you most of that traffic is not converting. They're one-timers, and they're going away with a bad experience because they're not coming back to look at your site again.
Yeah, one of the metrics I use when talking to clients is I don't talk about keyword rankings. I talk about visibility increases and maintaining that visibility. To me, that's a better thing to look at, because I could get you 100 number ones, but they could be on terms that aren't actually generating any traffic and that sort of thing. That's why I do the reports, but for me, they're more about it being a indicator of a problem on a site. So I can monitor the rankings to see where all of a sudden we're not doing as well as we should. And maybe I should prioritize some work on that section of the website. Things like that. I don't really get invested in ranking for certain terms. Or I have one client who likes to count how many number ones, how many top 10, 20, 30. But
I
now
remember
that
years ago, we used to provide a chart.
Yeah, but now he sees when I increase those numbers, that's increasing his visibility, and that's sustainable rather than, and actionable rather than rankings, which I don't know. I never believed that they were really actionable. They just told me, didn't supply any answers, just told me there was questions to look deeper.
Well, again, I mean, we've been around long enough that we've seen more than a few algorithm changes come along that, yeah, I mean, completely turned the SERPs upside down. You know, clients suddenly going, where have we gone? You know, our site was great. We were number one for years, and suddenly now we're nowhere. You know, these things can happen. If you've built up the brand, that's a search you're never going to be beaten on. And, you know, it's still going to be providing that traffic while we fix whatever changed in the algorithm. You know, it is. It's a safety level that I don't think some are aware of.
In most cases, for the first time, I found one where the SERP changed. There was some kind of algorithm change, but it's not moving. Like all of a sudden, a whole different type of site is showing up prominently, and that is where it's like a head scratcher, right? But when that made me look really close at the last algorithmic update for local, and I've had a few discussions with Bill, and I believe that it's no longer location and distance. It's a question mark now how they're actually doing it, because I've seen aggregators in a pack where you go to that aggregator's website and it says he's in Vancouver and he's in a local pack for Toronto. Mm-hmm. That shouldn't have happened even 2 months ago, right? Before August, that would never happen. It was in the there was an aggregator in that local pack. How I know that it shouldn't have been there was because it only was there for 2 weeks and then it disappeared. Which tells you what? It's an anomaly. Somebody complained and they removed it. That's probably what happened.
They did make a lot of changes to local. Local's still one of the big things they're working with. And as they go into mobile first, you understand why, because location is much, much more important to mobile search than it ever was to desktop. So we are ramped up.
But also when you look at what they were doing in local, where they would not put two competitors in the results because they're 100 yards from one another, right? Or even bigger, you have 15 doctors all practicing the same thing in one building, and they'll only show one doctor from that building. That's really not good, because I want to be able to go to a place where there's 15 doctors that I can possibly get an appointment. Like we're talking, I saw in the news today, in one city in Ontario, the person had to wait 4 years for something to do with the brain. And, well, you know, the government said, oh, geez, we screwed up. We're looking into that. But it's because the city there's no neurologists that went there. So there's a shortage of them. And they put them on a waiting list 4 years.
Well, it can be a real bitch. We just had Peter Hathley saying that visibility is a brand he's been working on in New Zealand, in the market he deals with. Visibility is definitely part of it, but I'd also specifically talk about brand and brand recognition, because the more people that are using that brand openly, the more people are going to be talking about that brand and remembering that brand and mentioning it to others. So it can increase brand recognition as well. And brand recognition, we know, is a major factor in click-throughs. When you feel a bit lost, when you're not sure about something, you're much more likely to stick with brands you know.
Right.
When you're not sure about what actually, you know, right, well, what really sets apart this camera from that camera and blah, 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 you'll stick with a brand you know, because you go, all right, well, they never do bad products, so I'm going to be safe. It may not be the best, but I know I'm not buying a lemon. And when that happens, brand is really, really important. We are almost at the top of the hour. So let's round up a bit. Let's start off with you, Terry. What have you got coming up in the next week or so?
Oh, I brought in a fresh supply of gasoline. So, you know, putting out fires with gasoline as usual.
That'll work.
I was going to say that drink problem's got worse, mate. How about you, Steve?
Just poking the bear a little bit these days. Mentioned earlier, we're building what the kids call a makerspace, and putting a lot more time into actually shop and getting the wood shop up and running, and trying to find some more away from the computer time.
Yeah, that's
kind of time to start doing that a little more. That, and I have a new book to read, which I mentioned earlier. I gotta love this. This will be nice to. It'll make me popular in the house. That's for sure. My wife's gonna see me reading that and just shake her head and walk away.
I prefer your bucket.
Exactly.
Yeah, is the farm keeping you busy? This is kind of the downtime of year, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, no, not really, because we were out of town last weekend, and Saturday morning I got a phone, or Friday morning I got a phone call from one of the neighbors letting me know the cows were out. It's like, you do know I'm out of state, right? And he's like, oh yeah, that's right. What do we do? And I'm like, well, hopefully catch them and put them back, because I'm 12 hours away. But no, this time of year the ground stays wet, the snakes go to sleep, and it makes good time to start clearing some more trees and stuff along the creeks to make it a little safer to wander around out there.
Yeah,
just a different kind of busy.
If if you have any spare time while you're getting rid of snakes, pop into the link building space. There's plenty of them there.
Yeah, I can do that. Plenty of link building, plenty of fan building. What are we call it? Growth hacking. That's it. Growth hacking.
Growth hacking.
I love all these terms. I really do. They make me giggle.
Growth hacking just sounds like a really bad cancer surgeon to me. It just always happens.
Yeah. It's kind of what you expect to see the guys at the gym drinking or something.
Yeah. Well, we are going to go off there, but thanks very much. Pleasure always, guys. Thanks everyone that tuned in for watching us, and we'll be back next week, and probably with Bill back. So take care.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Pub